Hi ladies. So at this point, John has fully unpacked the meaning of the Lamb's Scroll with the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls, as well as those series of signs. And so what we're doing now is we're entering this final session where some key themes are further unpacked, each exploring the coming of God's final kingdom from a slightly different perspective, especially looking through the view of two very different cities. The city of Babylon, the prostitute, and that of Jerusalem, Christ's bride. So this week, we're going to look at Babylon and her demise. 3 key points: Babylon the prostitute, the fall of Babylon, and the worship of false gods. So first, Babylon the prostitute. A stunning queen is shown to John by the angel, looking so attractive at first glance. However, you see that she's become drunk on the blood of the martyrs and the innocents, and she's pictured riding this dragon beast from the signs section earlier, which symbolizes all the power of evil, and also all the rebellion nations that had pledged their allegiance to her. She was beautiful on the outside, attractive even, but actually inside she was pure filth. A picture of the unholy and unrighteous, a total opposite of the New Jerusalem that we see later. The symbols of her empire would have probably been very obvious to those first readers, and they would have probably linked it directly to Rome. Rome was built across 7 hills. God of Rome was the goddess Roma. She was also a woman. And under, both Neron and Domitian, many who thought was actually like Nero reborn, they were persecuting the early Christians mercilessly. But John is actually using Babylon in a much wider metaphor. It is actually any empire in the past, present, or future that rises through military conquest, political and/or economic power to enslave and persecute people, and especially the people of God. And so the languages and the images here would have also reminded those early readers who knew the Old Testament so well of stories like the Tower of Babel, Babylon, Tyre, Edom, all references in Genesis and Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. Rome was simply the latest example of an empire that would rise in rebellion against God, forcing allegiance and misleading people into the worship of false gods. So number 2, the fall of Babylon. In order to prepare the way for Christ's return, Babylon the prostitute has to be destroyed. And so when the vengeance of the Lord is poured out upon her, the cries and the grief of those who worship her, merchants, traders, sailors, anybody that lived with her, that had grew all their wealth through her, that had their political power and influence, they just showed that their love for her and their worship was only really out of self-interest and greed. Their allegiance was superficial, only as long as she had the power and that she was able to deliver them wealth. However, when she could no longer do that, they turn on her and kill and destroy her themselves. God's mighty sovereignty is once more displayed. He has the power to use anything and anyone to fulfill his purposes. So number 3, the worship of false gods. This is the human condition. Babylon represents anything or anyone, or even any empire that in the past, present, or to come, or even today, that causes us to love something more than we love God, that causes us to love another false god instead of the one true God. In chapter 18, we hear this plea from heaven calling his people to come out of Babylon, to run, to flee, to leave her behind, to make sure that she has no claim on you. It's almost like a mirror image of when Abraham and the angels went to rescue Lot and the angels brought his family out of Sodom and Gomorrah before it was destroyed. God is a jealous God. He will not tolerate us worshipping in word or deed anyone other than him. He wants his people back to himself, to be his pure and holy bride for Christ. Remember Matthew 22, verses 37 to 38. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And second, love your neighbour as yourself. So the application this week. Are we complicit? Do we worship false gods, either knowingly or not? Is God calling you and me to do a bit of a soul and a heart inventory right now about where our real worship and allegiance are? Where the false gods are in our hearts and lives that we need to move away and reject? Do we worship wealth? Do we define or align our identity more with a political party or a tribe or a community or a social media influencer? Are we obsessed more with our body image and the way we look on the outside than we are with the state of our own hearts? Are we spending all our time and efforts in pursuing a successful career or power or influence? Do we spend more time reading tweets and watching others on Instagram or following influencers than listening and spending time with the Lord? Am I reflecting Jesus in my words, my actions, and loving God and my neighbours with everything that I am? In everything that we pour ourselves into, our time, our energy, our talents, our wealth, we have to ask the question, what would Jesus be doing? Have a great week, ladies. Speak to you soon. Bye.